If you create a space for really radical listening for what other people are saying, a massive amount of magical progress can be made inside telehealth that simply, I just have to say, if Freud would have known about telehealth, his volumes would have been entirely different.
Welcome to the More Than Corporate podcast. I'm Amber Fuhriman, recovering perfectionist and serial accomplisher. If you're anything like I used to be, you've been living your life thinking that if you accomplish enough stuff, you'll finally find the success you've always wanted. But what if it's not about accomplishing more stuff? What if it's about accomplishing the right stuff? I believe you don't find success, you create it by intentionally designing the life you want and having the courage to get out of your comfort zone to live your design. I went from doing what I was supposed to do to doing what I love to do, and now I get to help others do the same. Keep listening as I chat with inspiring people who make it their mission to live their best life every day and learn how you too can live the life you've always wanted. Welcome to another episode of the More Than Corporate podcast. I am really excited to bring Fred Moss to the show. Dr. Fred Moss is a holistic psychiatrist serving in many capacities, a telepsychiatrist, which is really an interesting phenomenon to me. I'm really excited to dig into that. A speaker, psychiatry expert witness, telehealth educator, mental health coach, and a filmmaker. A desire to help people has been the force leading him to various settings and roles as a psychiatrist over the years, and compelling him to continually look for better, more effective ways to provide the highest quality care. He is an amazing person behind Welcome to Humanity and Global Madness. Tune in and listen to Dr. Fred Moss share his experiences and reach new levels of success. We're going to talk about the field of psychiatry. We're going to talk about the changes that it's made, what we as business owners and entrepreneurs can tap into to reach that next level of success. We're going to talk about podcasting and true voice podcasting and books and all the amazing things. It's going to be such a fantastic episode. I'm really excited that you're here for it. If you are somebody who enjoys books, who enjoys reading, who enjoys learning, and you want to be able to take that to the next level through implementation, connection, and growth, then the Design Your Life Book Club is for you. It is a place where we read books together, we learn, we talk about what we've learned, and then I actually introduce you to the author for every single book that we read. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can go over to Success Development Solutions /book club and sign up there, or you can go to /connection call to book a call with me so that we can see if it's a good fit. With that being said, let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Fred.
Thank you.
Fred, thank you for being here. I'm so excited
to have
you.
It's a fabulous thing. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I've been looking forward to it. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. So
good.
Before we dig in, let's learn a little bit about you. Where are you currently located at? Where are you living?
I live in Northern California, a little bit north of Sacramento, in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas in a county called Nevada County in Grass Valley. And I live here with my amazing wife and the 3 cats who are homeschooling us each and every day.
Yeah, I feel like our pets do educate us every single moment, right?
For sure, man.
Fantastic.
For sure. Yep.
Are you from California or are you a transplant?
No. I grew up as a child. I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, and then I went to Ann Arbor for a bit. Then I went around the country for a bit, back to Ann Arbor, and then then I'm back to Detroit for a bit, and then I went to medical school in Chicago, Illinois, at Northwestern University, right downtown in Chicago, and I love Chicago, and that's where I really grew up. To be honest, was in those 5 years. And then I moved to Cincinnati, and that's where I raised my 2 children. And I was there for about 19 years before I went really full nomadic. I was all over the country and all over the world, practicing not only medicine, but practicing being an explorer, being a dad, being a friend, and being a world citizen. And then I moved to California when I finally found Alexandra. I had to chase her down a little bit. And so I found her in Los Angeles, and we were there for a little while, and we moved up in Northern California about 1.5 years ago. Got married in Tahoe last September, a couple Septembers ago, and I
Congrats.
know it was super awesome, super awesome. And so we're living the life up here.
There's something that you said that is really telling and something we don't talk about very often, and that's practicing to be a nomad. I feel
Mm,
like people think that the nomadic life, and this really applies to everything that we do, is just something that people pick up and they leave in and they figure it out and it's perfect. And it really does take practice to figure out how you're going to fulfill your responsibilities, what you want your responsibilities to be,
mhm.
and what life looks like. I think it's really interesting that you phrased it that way.
Well, it's just something, it does take time and energy. I miss the lifestyle to some degree, but now that I have an actual place that I love and, I've a little bit of a put a stake here, I don't miss traveling as much as I thought I would. I was a locum tenens as a physician, which meant that I was being hired to fill in gaps around the country of people, places and that needed a physician to step in for a while. And that allowed me to see many of the different rural and suburban and urban areas as I wished. Wherever I wanted to go, all I had to do was sort of apply for the job, make sure my license was intact, and move to those spaces. So I got to see a lot in America. And then when I started launching into going to Europe and going to Israel and working from there as well, that really led me to realize that I'm really just a world citizen. Like anything else named moss, a Rolling Stone gathers no moss, and there's no point in me slowing down is how I lived life. But these days, I really like that I have a place to live and an actual address to call my own.
I bet. I bet. What is it like in the medical field? I'm an attorney. And so, if I was to go state to state, I'd get in big trouble. Do you have to be licensed
Oh yeah.
statewide? And
Uh-huh.
do you have like reciprocity? Do they just wave you in for that? Or do you
No, no,
have to
no,
take
no
an exam?
reciprocity. No reciprocity. Yeah, each and every state, just like lawyers. My son's a lawyer as well. In fact, I'm an expert witness as well. So I had a what do they call it? Arbitration today that just got canceled this afternoon. So I'm excited about that. The case got continued, but I was fully prepared for it and prepaid for it, so that's great. The next thing is, when you're a doctor, like I had licenses my initial license was in Ohio, and then it was Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and
Good Lord.
Illinois. And then I got a license in California. And when I got my license in California, I started coming out here a little bit more often. My brother and sister live out here. And not like I stayed with them, but I like California. I have liked California my whole life. I've had licenses in Kentucky and North Carolina, and I can only really work in those states when I'm being a doctor. Now, sometimes, like with expert witness, for instance, there's reciprocity there. So I don't always need a license in the state
Mhm.
to offer an opinion in Texas or something like that.
What about the telehealth that you've gotten into,
Mm.
which we'll get into a little bit more? So, does telehealth go based on the license that you are physically in that state or the advice you're giving to the person who lives there?
That's a little tricky of a question. So I bent those rules a little bit. I think that they really want you to be housed in the state that you're licensed while treating people in a state that you're licensed in as well. So if I'm like theoretically, I should have if I'm going to live in California and work in Illinois, I should be licensed in both those states. But in reality, all I really need to be is licensed in the state for which my patient is in.
Mhm.
Okay. So when I was working in Illinois, I've had many, many telehealth jobs in Illinois. I did that from around the world. I did that from Israel. I did that in fact, there's some cool stories about me being a telehealth psychiatrist. Having my laptop on an ironing board in the middle of the night, actually treating people in rural southeastern Illinois. And I had a lot of fun actually being a psychiatrist in other countries, living in other countries while still providing care to the American population, as long as I was licensed in the state where those facilities were.
It makes sense to me because, I mean, that's part of the draw to telehealth. And, we'll get into this a little bit more as far as the cages that we tend to create for ourselves through the degrees that we get. But you would think that, that telehealth is appealing, at least in my mind, because you're not location dependent and you
Right.
finally get to explore and, live that life. So I'm glad that you found a way to make that work for you.
Oh, yeah. I've been a telehealth specialist for, about 12 years now. I should say that I've stopped doing that. I no longer do that anymore because everyone else is doing it, and I decided I need to move on. So who I really am now is a transformational restorative coach, no longer practicing medicine conventionally at all. And I'm also proud to say that. It's no longer, I no longer am stuck to having to do things the way that they're supposed to be done. Instead, I don't use my license. I don't, obviously I don't use my license in any way or use my let's say my education in any way but to move the needle forward. But telehealth back in the day, when there was a choice of actually going to someone's office or being a telehealth provider, the initial boost of what telehealth was, especially in psychiatry, was extraordinary. I mean, all of a sudden, if you needed help from a psychiatrist who was well fit to handle whatever problem you were dealing with, all you had to do was just like DM them and ask them to come on as a consult. And all of a sudden you've got the perfect doctor talking to you about your patient, even though they're 3,000 miles away. And, telehealth, as now everybody is pretty proficient these days, given the circumstances, everyone's pretty proficient like you and I are doing right here. No one is shocked or disturbed about coming online to actually have communications. But back in the day, it became my preferred way to do any kind of psychiatric interventions. I used to tell people that if I would be given an opportunity to be in the same room with someone or put somebody else in the next room on a computer, I would absolutely put somebody else in the next room on a computer, because all that happens is there's something called disinhibition and people start speaking their absolute
Mm,
truth. They feel safe. They don't feel weird about being in the same room. And also when you're looking at a computer, you're not, now these days we're changing a little bit, but you're not obvious. It's not obvious that people can see you as well as they can.
yeah.
You feel like you're just talking to that person and they can't see every single blemish or every single blink or every single twist and turn. But so people are really, all the guarding gets dropped. And then I can do work with like new patients. When I was practicing psychiatry, new patients, I could do 3 months worth of work in one visit with no problem, because we would just be off and running, sort of like me and you are now. Let's face it, we're 13 minutes in or something like that. And
Yeah.
we've already explored massive amounts of things that would not have occurred had you and I been in the same office. No way.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because I keep thinking back to my therapeutic experiences. And when I made the choice, I'm going to take responsibility for that. I made the choice to seek therapy, but it was out of things that seemed like I did not have choices, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes tons of
Um, I get really frustrated. Side note, really quick, I get really frustrated when I'm working with people and they tell me, "Well, I'm doing this because I don't have a choice." I'm like, "Look at all
yeah.
the amazing things you're doing," and they're like, "Well, I don't have a choice." And I'm like, "Well, you do, because there's this person on the corner that made the other choice." That is living the life that you could have. So take responsibility for that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but I remember my experience with her, and it was the first time that I had ever done any type of therapeutic healing at all. And I had a lot to heal. and, and it was probably a month in before I gave her a verbal apology. And she's like, "What are you apologizing for?" And I said, "I've been wasting your time and mine. I'm finally
Mm.
ready to start."
Mm.
And that was a month in. And so
Mhm.
I think that you're right. When people are comfortable in their environment, and this goes for any industry out there, when they're comfortable for their environment, then you get to the heart of the real issues that are in their
Mhm.
way.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
yeah.
There's a real authenticity that comes out that, sort of naturally gets exuded. And there's a real opportunity, once you get trained for looking for the non-vocal communications, the silent communications, the idiosyncrasies, you can start seeing that. And especially when you're in audio and visual like you are now, you get a really precise look of what it is to dance to each other, what the listener is thinking. I'm sort of reading your nods and checking how alert you are to what I say. And it really does direct how precise I can be with my words. And that goes in both directions. So if you create a space for really radical listening for what other people are saying, a massive amount of magical progress can be made inside telehealth that simply I just have to say, if Freud would have known about telehealth, his volumes would have been entirely different.
This is such an amazing conversation because I was just having this with somebody 2 hours ago. We were talking about communication for podcasters, and I said it'd be so amazing. Think about all of the information that we could get out from individual resources that aren't coming out in podcasts because people haven't learned exactly what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
how to read whether or not they're actually getting their point across, how to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to what somebody's leaning into and what they're pulling away from.
Mm-hmm.
And we have podcasters interviewing people that are these amazing sources of information. And, at 9/10 of it's getting left on the table because of a breakdown in communication.
Exactly. Well, that's very astute. This is how I developed the True Voice Podcasting Mastermind, and this has been my love, the last several months. And we have this summit coming up this next weekend on February 19th and February 20th, the True Voice Podcast Summit. And that's exactly what it's about. I had 25 people come through my course, and all of them went from zero to world-class podcaster in a 3-month period. And that's because, what we really taught, or what we really opened and resource for these folks, was the capacity to give permission to oneself and then rediscover or re-explore or connect with their core self, their true voice, their honest, authentic message. And then to use podcasting as the last remaining vestige of open and honest communication that it is, use podcasting as an incredible pathway to delivering a message appropriately and powerfully to the listenership that is eager, willing, and interested in hearing what people have to say about any particular subject. So I invite you to join us, of course, and to any of your listeners who are catching this beforehand, or even want to see the interviews are being taped, but it's generally a live event on the 19th and 20th where we're going to spotlight them. And we have a couple keynote speakers going to be learning and fun all over the 2 days. And it's really about the urgency of bringing True Voice out and the ease. Still, there is some ease still left, as long as you know where to look, to actually bring forth your honest message to a world that is ready for you.
Yeah, I think that that's so needed. It's so necessary. And there's two sides to this, right? Because I remember listening to an episode of Jordan Harbinger's podcast, and he said, people ask me how I get these really deep conversations with podcasts. And the answer is, I prepare, I read their book, I know the information, I know the knowledge. And while that's ironically uncommon in our field, it's only half of the picture. Like, he has this innate ability to connect with somebody and to find out where they're willing to go and where they're not willing to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you are creating a space for people to learn that.
Yes, we are. So, and really, to what Jordan said, kudos to that preparation tactic. I think it's a great strategy. There's another strategy to take that's exactly the opposite, that I think is at least equally as effective, which is to meet somebody just like your listeners are, without being prepared, and just connect with that person as a human. Now, I had I don't even know what to call her. I'll call her a partner. In fact, she just texted me today. It'd be hilarious if she ever gets to watch this particular episode. But we are a close partner. We lived together for about 3 years, and she had a real famous dad, super famous, like everyone knows kind of guy. And when she was growing up, some super famous people hung out at her house. Like people like, oh, really? Oh yeah, like every week they would come to her house. People that you really do know, I promise. and it was like, well, how'd you manage that? And what we've now joked around is, you just call them by their name and treat them like they're human. That's all. I don't really care if it's Jordan Peterson or Oprah Winfrey. It's like, how about if they come on my show, I treat them like a human. And then when I do that, you're right. I can read all Jordan's or Oprah's books and like be entirely ready for knowing where she wants to go and cleaning the edges for her so that she gets her absolute pathway to get to what the goal that she's intending to go to. Or I could just treat her like Oprah Winfrey, just a person over there. And there's some deep respect that comes from just catching up with somebody and being human with them.
On both sides, right? Because
For sure.
people that are of that caliber of notoriety, they're not used to being treated like humans
That's
anymore.
right. That's right.
So to be able to bring them back to a place
Yep.
where they can just have a conversation, that's a really interesting point of view that,
Yep.
is the other side to that preparedness. And I think as I take this for granted, and it's coming to me now that you're mentioning it, as an attorney, I naturally do that because that's what I tell my clients to do, right? You have to talk to the judge like he knows nothing about your case. So I prep my clients for that, but I forget that not everybody has honed that skill. So then they
Mhm.
read a book and then they come into a conversation talking about the book, and the listener's going, well, I haven't read this book. Why am I in this conversation?
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah, it's interesting as you speak about law, and if I just told you I had a canceled arbitration for tonight, then I'm so totally prepared for it. I know every single note, every single turn and twist of this particular case, and it was tonight wasn't the actual trial, but it was a MSG, an MSJ that needed to be dealt with. What's interesting inside the law field is that both things, and I think in our field too, in order to be effective, you have to have both ways. Number one, I I was gonna if I'm gonna get grilled tonight by some sort of cross-examining person who's out there to make me incompetent or out there to discredit me, and I better know every single detail of this thing, including every detail of the skeletons in my life. I should need to know everything to be prepared. Not walking into an arbitration unprepared is not a good plan. I guess that's
yeah.
what I'm kind of saying. But I also accepted a new case today. I got a call from the outside. Someone had a really interesting case that they want me to opine on, and they want. And so 4 minutes after he called, 4 minutes after he sent me an email, I called him, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And he asked me if I knew how to do this and that, and I said, yep, that's exactly what I do. And he said, okay, you're hired, and send me your. And there was something about send me your schedule and your CV, and we'll take care of it, and let's get started this week. I'm like, okay, thank you. And that conversation took about, I don't know, 9 or 10 minutes, but I would say that the value of that conversation came entirely from just treating that person like a person, not even like a case I needed or a big old lawyer or anything like that. It was really just being human with the person.
Yeah, this whole section of this podcast, if we didn't talk about anything else, this is gold for anybody who's listening. And I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care
Exactly.
if you're selling washing machines. I don't
Yep.
care if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a coach, a restaurateur. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Being able to know your industry, your products, and your clients inside and out, and also approach each relationship as this fresh human interaction, allowing them to dictate where that conversation goes, is so valuable. I feel like so many times people spend their life on this sales pitch. Let me craft this certain sales pitch. And then they're in the middle of these questions, and the customer's asking them questions. They're like, we'll get to that in just a minute. We'll get to that in just a minute.
You're right.
The customer's telling you what they want to know. Ditch everything else
Right.
and have a human conversation. So valuable.
Yeah. It is. It is just so valuable. Another thing that happened today, I'm working a lot with this summit, and with, now planning to deliver big summits. I have my book just came out this week. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I will talk about that in a moment. And there's this idea of being effective by being authentic is very,
Mhm.
very interesting. Like sort of laughing with the other person at the absurdity of what it means to be a human, or sort of having compassion with another person at the overwhelming amount of responsibility and accountability it is just to meet another person, let alone to have a meaningful conversation. Like, just actually getting the core truth of the insanity of what it is to be alive in the very day that we're in right now, while we're pretending that we're not supposed to be insane. It's so important to share that with other people. And when you do that, at least you get like we're about to get right now, me and you get to be like siblings. We get to be like friends. We get to be like, one. And that can only happen when you're bringing something true forward.
There's something else that so much of what you're saying is speaking to my soul. And I have all of these experiences that are just popping up. And one of them, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show, is my relationship with relationships with others. And I used to approach it very opposite to what you just said. I would go in, I love to travel. So I'd be at the airport and I would close myself off as much as possible because I'm never going to see these people again. So why should I build a relationship with them? What could I possibly have to say to them that's going to matter, because I'm never going to see them again? And the moment that I stepped back and allowed myself to be present and say, whether this person is in my life for 30 seconds or 30 years, I'm going to be present during this interaction. All of a sudden, I started making deeper connections and having experiences that I don't necessarily talk to them all the time anymore, but those experiences live on inside of me and dictate what I do moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge lesson to learn. So as you're saying, just live with people and share the human experience with them.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did it. I don't know what the shift was. I know the work I did to get there, but I'm curious for anybody who's listening who says, so how? Like,
Yeah.
how do you just drop everything and be imperfect with others?
All right. Well, let's breathe into that. It's a deep question, and I think it's a great question. Here, the first thing I think I would want to say to that is, it's nearly impossible, if not totally impossible, to be an authentic human being. Like, the world is calling on us in so many different angles. It's like you're being compassionate with yourself. I mean, you're doing your very best to do your very best, and then you're coming up with these ideas that you call true or untrue, or you become convicted to certain ways of thinking or anything like that. And all of them are rooted in some ways in some degree of soil or some degree of maybe not. Like, you're not entirely sure of anything that you say being entirely true. Nothing. I'm sorry, but you're not. Even the stuff that you're totally sure is true, you're not even sure if that's true. I just promise you. Even the stuff that yeah, but Fred, what about even that stuff?
I'll tell you.
You don't know. You don't
You
know.
don't know. I before we continue down this, just to
Yeah.
highlight what you're saying, I remember my dad passed away when I was 18, and I remember the day he passed away like the back of my hand. And then I tell that story to somebody, my mom, and she says, "That's not the way
That's
that it
not what happened.
happened."
Isn't that great?
And I was like, "No, it is." And then I get the police report, and then I get the newspaper articles, and I see the time of day, and I see that, like, the way I remember it, like the back of my hand, could not have possibly been the way it happened based upon the information that's in front of me. And you and I deal with this in the field of the
All the
legal and medical all the time,
time.
but our memories, they're just not reliable. So I love
Mhm.
that you highlighted on that. So continuing down this path of being human, I love that, and I think it's a huge part of it. So sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
yeah, no, not at all. Not an interruption, an addition for sure. What we really have is the possibility of really embracing the unembraceable, of being amused, of being enchanted, or of being curious. Of really getting all that it means to be human, and when we're with another person, and getting moving. We don't like to be judged. How about if we stop judging? Is there a possibility? We don't get out of this thing alive. I read the last chapter by mistake, and I thought I was, and that's what it said. None of us are going to get out of here alive. So it's possible to really just step back, and I'm not going to say enjoy say appreciate even the discomfort of what it means to be in the world. And, there's a ton of discomfort here. There's a ton of discomfort that we all get to deal with. Each and every one of us have had experience of maximum discomfort at some version in our life, some portion of our life. And I think when you start looking at just resetting and being with people, I think I would want to listen again to the exact precise nature of your question. But when we start really looking at what it's like to reset with another, we can open up and think from zero. We can start from zero and be curious. Like, if I was that person, I would be thinking exactly as they are, something like that. And
Yeah.
It allows for peace. It allows at least for the possibility, even if the guy says something that's completely adversarial or totally different than anything I could think would be possibly worth listening to. There's something about, wow, isn't that interesting that I'm about to dismiss this dude because he just said something that I decided was dismissible.
Yes. And, you know, we talk all the time, especially in the business owner and entrepreneurial space. We talk about how do you reach these bigger goals that you have? And the answer to that in a nutshell, although there's many, is allow your perceptions to expand to the point where what you want is possible and reachable. Well, how do you do that? You quit dismissing people who say things that are different from what you think. And it all goes back to this ability to be human with them. I think the reason that these podcasts that we do are so successful is because the people who listen want validation that those feelings of inadequacy that they have are not just theirs, that other
Oh, yeah.
people have them as well. I know when I listen to podcasts and somebody says something and it's like you feel it to your core. You're like, man, I know what that feels like, and I'm glad I'm not alone.
Right.
But we can only experience that if we're willing to tell people what we're going through. It's like this double-edged sword.
All right. So you put me up to an edge of another place, which I think is a really good hopping off point. And I'm really glad we're here, which is, I think all of mental illness is based on this exact piece of information that you just brought forth, that people come to a doctor it's already a pretty skewed population. People think they're coming to most situations you go to a doctor to find out if there's something wrong with you. That's not why you go to a psychiatrist. The reason you go to a psychiatrist is to find out that there's something wrong with you. See, I've had the experience of telling people who come into my office that I don't think there's anything wrong with them, and they just get freaking furious.
And then they go somewhere else
They
to
go next
somebody
door.
who will
They go
tell
next
them.
door. Yeah. See, that doesn't happen in any other subspecialty.
No, you're right. You are 100% right. That need for a second opinion that validates the preformed belief that you've already created.
That something's wrong with you.
Yes. That's crazy.
It is crazy, and crazy is a psychiatric word by no doubt. And here's the thing. The value of being like, when I feel alone, when I can be told, oh, yep, you mean I've been a jerk to my wife the last month. Is there something wrong with me? Yep, you've got a blip, or you've got bipolar type 2, or you got a social anxiety. You got autistic spectrum disorder. Then you can walk out of there and relinquish responsibility for that portion of your life.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're speaking so much truth to my soul right now. And what you just said, I want people to hear this really quickly. You get to relinquish control for that portion of your life, which means that the thing that is stopping you from accomplishing everything that you want to accomplish, you have just said, I don't have any control over. And then you're going to go to somebody like me, a business coach, and you're going to say, I don't know why I can't reach my goals. And I'm going to say, it's because you're giving too much of your power away to this imaginary diagnosis that you created and paid somebody to confirm.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like, yeah, that's exactly right. Entirely. And then from that point, and there is some real value in doing that. Look, if I don't like taking responsibility for being less than the man I know I am to be. Okay. I don't like that. And if I can hand that off to like you or my wife or a condition, I'll be glad to do that. I don't, seriously, it's a pain in the neck to realize that I'm an idiot. It just is. So
truer words have never been spoken.
So if that's the case, and I can walk to a doctor and they could say that you have ADD, you have adult ADD, no wonder you're a jerk. It's like, oh, I can't wait to go home and tell my wife that I have adult ADD and I'm a jerk because I can't help myself.
Yes.
Not only does it serve that purpose, and that seems like I'm blaming the patient. I don't really mean to do that, because here's the thing. It takes real courage to get that you are a jerk. It's true. Your experiences of being depressed or anxious are as real as ever. Whether or not I give you a diagnosis, I am not saying that those things aren't brutally real. In fact, I'm underlining them. Not only am I not diminishing them, I would say that I'm actually emphasizing them. I'm giving them to you as part of life's potpourri of what it means to be a human being. like you're going to have extraordinarily non-understandable, miserable experiences in life. Things that bring you to your knees, things that confuse you and dissect you. And that's called being human. Now, the truth is, you could say, I'm sick because I had those. Well, no, you're not. Actually, we're all sick then because we've all had them. But so it really turns out that as a psychiatrist, and it's in many ways why I'm no longer practicing conventional psychiatry, as a psychiatrist, it's very valuable if I am given the power to diagnose you, because that assumes that the world thinks that I'm okay enough to actually decide what okay is, and then be able to judge you like, nope, you're less than okay. Like, so you tell me I'm good while I tell him he's bad. This works really good for me too, for my ego, for my, for my self image. Even if it's made in smoke and mirrors, I get to feel good about it being a diagnoser. The patient, we've already decided, gets to feel good about relinquishing responsibility for their life. And the family also gets to decide that they like this too, because now we see why our family is screwed up, because Johnny has autistic spectrum disorder. It's like, oh, no wonder. We would have been a good family without that. Again, offering secondary relinquishment for the aspects of life, for important aspects of life. It really does take courage to look at this boldly, like naked, and really get that all of these experiences that you're having. I have a keynote speech that I like to call "You are not mentally ill, you are just human." And there's something really to that. Again, I have to be a little bit careful because there's people out there who are so completely committed to keeping their mental illness intact. Like, I am effing mentally ill. Okay. Just want to let you know that's just a conversation. And the day that you want to stop seeing yourself as sick and start seeing yourself as a unique human individual with very painful experiences is a day where you're going to re-empower yourself and allow yourself to go in directions that right now aren't available to you because you have yourself as being ill. Now, I've seen 40,000. I've put my note in a chart of 40,000 patients in the last 40 years. And that doesn't make me a super expert. It just makes me 40,000 more patients than the average person. What's here is when we re-empower someone from the ground, like, you know what, you don't have to be mentally ill anymore. Or when we get that sometimes receiving the diagnosis and then the associated conventional treatment actually perpetuates the conditions they're marketed to deal with. When we get that crazy phenomena in place, because that is a crazy phenomena, but oh yeah, that, Dr. Fred, makes some real sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And, to be clear for anybody who's listening, who's on the edge of like jumping through
Yeah.
the computer screen,
Yeah.
I don't think either of us are saying that the things that come along with the diagnoses are not real.
No,
It's
they're very
that
real.
by giving your power away to the diagnosis instead of working within the framework that you have as a human to be the most productive, you are doing yourself and the world a disservice, because now all these gifts that you have that you're supposed to be sharing with the world are locked inside of this diagnosis, instead of saying, this is the way my brain works and this is how I'm going to work within that because I now know the information. And
Yeah.
so I think or the other side of that is, oh, I can have anxious feelings without having anxiety? I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Exactly. Or I can feel entirely helpless, hopeless, and befuddled. I can feel aimless. I can feel completely confused. I can feel totally furious. I can feel like so sad, or I can feel like so afraid. So I can feel terrified. I can feel uneasy in a crowd. I can sometimes not complete my tasks. I can have trouble sleeping. There's others, like I can have rapid moving thoughts. I can even hear voices. And the answer is, yeah, that's right. That's called human. And it does not diminish the power of any of those experiences. I cannot say that loud enough, because that's the weird translation that happens that makes people think they need to come through the screen. The truth is, I am more than interested in dealing with the seriousness of the matter of what it takes for you to be another human. Completely. Let's bring it. Bring every piece of it. And let's get that that's your experience. It's like the deck of cards that you have right now, and that's it. And it includes pain, discomfort, and misery. Buddha sat under a tree for a while, and what he came up with after he was done figuring out everything else in the world, the last thing that he couldn't figure out was that, okay, I guess there's misery. I think I can get up now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's oversimplification. People could want to come through the screen on me on that one too. But the point is, it's the point. It's one of the conclusions is that the way we live this three-dimensional lifetime is going to lead inevitably to massive misery if we don't do anything to deal with it, to mitigate it.
Yeah. And let's go back to what we were talking about in the very beginning and highlight the fact that by being willing to come on a podcast like this, and me being willing to not have an agenda, and you being willing to be open and human, we have been able to have a conversation and go deeper than a planned podcast ever could. So when we're going back to how do you show up, like, this entire episode is just proof of what can happen when you're willing to just show up. So I want to say thank you for that. And I can see the incredible value of your experiences, your knowledge, your education, but more importantly, just your mindset and how that could help people really reach the level of success that they want to have and communicate better with others. If people want to learn more about your book, to learn more about True Voice podcasting, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Well, True Voice Podcasting is truevoicepodcasting.com. You can find us on Facebook as well in the True Voice community. And if you want to learn more about me, I'm at Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. That website is being upgraded as we speak, as is all my social media. And that's because I really did just recently go in the last year or two, go with a massive transformation into being more a stand for true voice, or for finding true voice, than I ever was before as a psychiatrist. I used to be a doctor, and now I'm a healer. Now that we really work together to bring forth a new understanding of the critical need to bring our honest message forward. And that's who I'm a stand for. It's really who I've been a stand for the whole ride, even through my stay in conventional medicine. And now I'm free again on this side to actually help others find their true voice inside of this pretty challenging world that we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, shifting just a little bit, because this is the More Than Corporate podcast, and it was created out of my desire to share my experiences with success and help others relate in that human way. And I never will forget, I'm sitting in my therapist's office, and I tell her, I feel like such a failure. I'm 6 months in, and she says to me, Amber, you have a 6-figure income. You're the first person in your family to go to college. You live in Las Vegas. You support yourself. What does success mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, nobody has ever asked me that question before.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent the next 4 years trying to figure it out. So I ask every single one of my guests, what does success mean to you? How do you define that for yourself individually?
Yeah. I'm not sure I would use the same definition each and every time, but I think at this point, it's a matter of being at peace with yourself most of the time. I don't think that you're going to find peace with yourself all the time. And one of the recent success, let's see if I can say it again. If you can get that there's no reason to either hurry death or slow death down at all, then you must be living a successful life. If you can get that you don't want to die any quicker than you're going to, and there's no reason to die, and the opposite also being true. That you don't need to live longer than you're going to, and you don't need to die. The whole thing, like, just be comfortable with death as it's coming. No need to slow it down or speed it up. I think that that's representative of success. But the thing is, I think the other space is, I think I learned this in Boy Scouts or somewhere along the line as a camper. If if you can create a situation where you are leaving this world better off because you were here, that's kind of an irrefutable measure of a successful life as well. And it just boils down to that. You've made some bad mistakes in this life, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. For the person who's listening, and I am sad to think that it's more people than I want to admit that are saying peace sounds like an amazing definition of success. I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
How do you compare peace and complacency? How does
Mm.
somebody be at peace and still strive for more at the same time?
Well, complacency is sort of stopping where you are and somehow, like giving up. And that is not what peace is. In my first book, my second book, the one that just got released, is called Find Your True Voice. And my first book is called Creative 8. And that was, healing through creativity and self-expression. And it's in the world of peace as a creator. So sometimes art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those kinds of things, when we're actually delivering ourselves, our self-expression to another, there's a peace that gets set inside of the unification of being with other humans. Sort of a willingness to share with another the trials and tribulations and beauties and ecstasies of what it is to be a human in both directions. That's a certain kind of peace that doesn't resonate with the notion of complacency. Complacency is like, you know what, screw it, whatever. Or, you know what, I've already made it there. I'm going to watch Netflix or, like that. That's not in the same level of, intra-realm peace peacemongering. And I think the peacemongering thing it's a dynamic reality. It's one that not only has you experiencing peace, but then opening the doors for the people who are with you to experiencing peace.
Man, such a great answer. It's the more I remember when I first went to my first personal development conference and I heard a speaker say, life isn't about the answers you have, it's about the questions you ask. And I thought, that's bullshit. I'm an attorney. It's all about the answers. And the more that I go down this path and the more that I work with clients in a coaching capacity and work on myself in a client capacity, the more I realize that the questions that we really need answers to don't have answers, that it's the willingness to ask the question that allow us to grow. If you had this magical answer that you could tap up in a bow of what peace is, you would be a gazillionaire. It's the willingness to ask the question, am I at peace? Am I successful? Do I feel? And I think it's really incredible that you have allowed people to go there. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. It's this, I don't have much left to do in the world. I really don't. I've had a great life, and it's not like a swan song. I don't mean that. What I really mean to say is that it's time to pour back what I've learned. And it's not that much to do, really. It's just a matter of, well, if you can find joy every so often, that'd be good. It's a good thing. Joy's a cool thing. If you want to, if you can find love, every few segments of time, like actually feel love either for all of humanity or the entire life experience or just your partner or your kids or your animals, that's fine. That's really good. That's a good thing to do. The truth is, all the other stuff in the negative vibration experiences, if you can accept those and embrace those as part of the magic smorgasbord of what it means to be alive, now we're talking about a massive capacity to appreciate life.
Yeah.
Including the stuff that doesn't necessarily feel good. So there's that out there. And I just think that opening this space for that, it's not simple for me. It's not like I've mastered that. I don't like being miserable any more than anybody else does. And I get miserable every so often. There's no real miserable. I don't like it any more than anyone else does. And it doesn't mean that when I'm miserable, there's something wrong with me. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really want to drive home. And when we open up that possibility for our clients or for our patients, then that opens up the space for them to actually explore that for themselves. And that's where I think healing really begins. It's like at the heart of all healing is human connection.
Yes.
All healing.
Yes, I agree. Such an amazing way to end this conversation. Before we completely wrap up, I always end the show with a quick random round. Are you okay with that?
Yep. Bring it.
Awesome. If you could time travel, where would you go and why?
I think I'd go about 5 years from now, same place. What the F happened?
Yeah. If you could do any profession other than what you're doing now, what do you think would be fun to attempt?
Oh my goodness. I suppose astronaut or something would be one that I would, that seems like a one that's been there the whole time. Like I would, or National Basketball Association star.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah,
The
I would.
astronaut too. I see you as somebody who would really enjoy like the whole just taking in of everything that you would see from space. So
Yeah, no, I'd love to be a pro basketball player. I would have loved that.
that's awesome. Did you play at all as a kid?
I played until I started smoking weed.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's about the time it ends. Other than your book, Find Your True Voice, what book have you recommended the most to business owners and entrepreneurs?
I think it's Napoleon Hill. I think that's just the best book out there in this whole game. I think that's the one that changes the most lives.
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich. Is that
Think and
the
Grow Rich.
Napoleon? Yeah.
Mhm.
And the last question is, I say it's easier, but for some people it's not. I'm a huge music nerd and I need new songs on my library. What's your pump up song? What do you throw on when you just have to have a good day?
When I just have to have a good day. I recently I've been listening to Jimmy Cliff. You can get it if you really want, or I Can See Clearly Now. I recently I've been listening to Jimmy, really getting a lot of enjoyment out of reggae recently.
That's awesome.
And just to have your listeners know, now that I've answered 2 questions with like marijuana and reggae, it's not like I get high every day at all.
Thanks for clarifying that. Fred, it's been such an amazing conversation. There are few guests that I love every single one of my podcast episodes that I do, but there are a few that leave me feeling like it will transform not only my listeners' life, but mine as well. And this is one of those. So thank you for the last hour.
Of course. My deep pleasure. I hear you. I respect that. I honor it and receive it. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely. Have a fantastic day.
Thanks. You too, Amber. Really great being on your show.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the More Than Corporate podcast. If anything that was said during this episode resonated with you or provided value in any way, it would mean the world to me if you would head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the More Than Corporate podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. If you'd also like to connect, I've created a Facebook group that is full of amazing people who also make it their mission to live their best life every single day. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, the name of that Facebook group is Success Center. Head over there, request to join, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.